Uh-oh.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I had a little bit of false start. I was sorting out my phone. I'm not one of those technical women that can multitask. So I am absolutely delighted, and we are very lucky. I know you probably already know it, everyone, but we are very lucky to have the fabulous Kate Bagnall with us. And her self-esteem is in good nick because she nodded then, as if to say, that's right, you are very lucky.
I just meant we were all lucky. I didn't mean because of me.
Oh no, it was one of those unconscious movements where consciously we'd be very modest saying, but unconsciously we're going, that's right.
Oh,
that's
no.
Right. Well, we are very lucky, Kate, because I know that you charge to give this advice, and it is in fact your business, one of your businesses as a recruitment consultant, owning your own business, a director of your own business.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so inspired talking to you the other day, the hope and the reality of what's happening out there is probably very different to our collective belief. You know, if I'm to speak on behalf of what I hear from people and their assumptions and therefore how that affects their actions, that the market is, well, there's lots of people being made redundant, there are no jobs out there, and if there are, everybody's going for them and I won't get them. So, and it kind of creates that kind of not defeatist energy, because the people I know are not defeatist people, but they recognize, they feel like they're up against a really big challenge and problem. And then speaking to you the other day, your heart said, I want people to know that there are jobs and employers are very discerning, and the great people are getting the roles. So we just had to have you come and infect us here in the Be Unstoppable group. And so I've given you a tiny introduction. Could you give your expertise and experience the justice of giving yourself a good introduction?
Oh my goodness, I think you've done a great job. But yeah, I've had my own recruitment business for 15 years. So, which, gosh, it's just got in a heartbeat. I worked I graduated from university, didn't really know what I wanted to do, fell into a sales job, and then I got into recruitment and just absolutely loved it. Loved working with people, that kind of satisfaction of helping clients and helping people get jobs and making huge life changes for them that were, getting a job's, it's a massive part of your life. So, and I've done that for 15 years now. And so our business is based in, we're home based at the moment, but it's based in West Yorkshire, and my background is finance recruitment, but we kind of cover all commercial, office recruitment. But the advice I'm going to give today could be for anybody, really. But do you want me to just carry on from what you were sort of saying there, Lisa?
Just let me say something. I also think then from what we were, because we have prepped a little bit, haven't we? I mean, as much as we are experts, in fact, it was you that was on top of me about prepping. But I think some of the advice you're going to give today will be good for business owners who are presenting themselves to clients on because that's still a recruitment process. We just use a different word. We just call it a sales process or a customer journey or those kind of things. So I just wanted to slot that in. Yes, sorry, what were you going to say?
Because it's just on the flip side, isn't it? And obviously the impression that candidates get, what we don't often realise when people are going for jobs is that, and I know we're going to talk about Zoom today, but for clients, it's all new to them as well. And so a lot of the advice I'm going to give or talk about is completely relevant to either side. So definitely. I was just going to follow on from what you sort of said there, Lisa, just about, I'm not, underrating the magnitude of the situation that we're in or anything like that. And, there are a lot of industries that have been hit hard in terms of employment. So, I do understand that. However, on the flip side of that, there are businesses that are doing really, really well. And just before we go, I know today's about Zoom interviewing, what you can do. But I just wanted you to have a think about, if you are looking for a job, what are those stories that you're telling yourself? What are you saying to yourself when you are applying for jobs and going for interviews, because they will become the reality of the situation. We all know the power of what you think. And I just wanted to say that the facts are, and because I work in this every day, that there are companies that are doing really, really well. And it is actually even harder to find really good talent. And the reason that is because there's a couple of things, really. A lot of people who are in what they consider steady, safe jobs, who would have perhaps been looking for that next move, that career move, have changed, their perception of things and think, gosh, well, I'm in a safe company. I don't want to move. I'll stay where I am. So that movement of candidates has reduced significantly. Also, the extension of the furlough scheme has meant that a lot of people that perhaps may have been made redundant or will be in the future are still employed. So they are not necessarily in the jobs market anyway. So there are some real opportunities, and I really want you to believe this. If you are looking for a job, that there are some really great opportunities out there. People are crying out for good people. And so if you are in that position, please do feel optimistic, because that will become your reality. And it is the reality, that is the situation.
I love that, because it's possibly not an aspect that most recruiters cover. Is what is your belief about what you're going into? And there are some amazing recruiters out there, and I've met some of them, but often what they spend their time doing is, how are you going to manage the interview? How are you going to come across? And it's a lot about the doing part and less about the mindset and the believing part. And I couldn't agree with you more that the movie that you play in your mind before you do anything is what you're preparing your mind to create for you. And so it's absolutely brilliant advice. So where do you want to start with this? Where feels a good place to start about a Zoom interview?
Well, I mean, there's obviously, I know we talked, preparing for an interview is a whole other topic that we might have to do another time, but I thought if we probably started talking about setting the stage and how you do that in terms of zooming an interview, is that okay?
Perfect.
So we're all au fait with videoing now. I think pretty much we use it on I would say a daily basis, but still when it comes to an interview on Zoom, people just completely and utterly freak out. Because it's so alien to us. But what I would say is that this is how things are going to be, and it's just accepting that, well, this is how interviews are now, so I kind of need to make myself as good at that as possible. And there are so many things that you can do. Some of these things I was saying to Lisa, I hope they don't sound really obvious, but what I would say is, because perhaps I do this on a regular basis with people, they seem obvious, but the amount of people that I meet, I'll give you some funny examples. I'm not, talking about senior people sitting on beds with dirty underwear in the background, sinks full of pots. It's almost like people are unaware of that. It's really strange. So apologies if they are obvious, but I'm going to say them anyway. But if we kind of start with setting the stage for your interview, so whichever platform that you're going to be using, whether it's Zoom or Teams, or we actually have our own interview platform that we use, make sure that you've tested it and you're familiar with it. That sounds really obvious, but what happens is people go, I've got an interview in 20 minutes, and they rock up 5 minutes before. You need to be ready, I would say 10 minutes before, and I mean completely ready, and have that platform and be familiar with it. The other thing is, there are differences between meeting face-to-face and on Zoom. So I would suggest that you practice your interview with a friend or a family member, or, jump on Zoom and record it and watch it back, because you will notice certain things that you do. There might be things that you're not familiar with, that you're not aware of, that you do. So make sure that you record that and watch back. It is so valuable, and you'll get some real gold from that.
It is. And, I find, I know you've got some other tips, but I find that the most obvious advice I receive is the most valuable. And so be as obvious as you like. I think that we've become quite complacent with walking around with that, and so we forget to check what's not blooming me. I can tell you, I don't want people seeing what's on my bed. But then the other part is, that some people, and what we have to remember, I guess, about interview full stop is we leave a lot for whoever's on the other side to make assumptions, because when we're in front of each other, we can see that somebody's just got a scratch and they're scratching it. When that's down there, it looks like somebody's looking at their phone or disinterested, and we're quick to leap to thinking that person's looking at their phone when they're not. But because that's and so I guess we kind of need to make sure that we're not putting our attention or fiddling in a way that makes the other person make the wrong assumption, or worse, the right assumption, and we are on our phone.
Yeah, it's being just that, having that focus, isn't it? And I think one of the things that I would say to anyone, especially say you've got an interview like later on in the afternoon, you know, let's say you've got an interview at 4 o'clock and you've been working all day. You are not, if you were going to an interview, you would get yourself dressed, probably changed from work, you'd get some fresh air outside, you'd arrive, you'd compose yourself. If you've been on a screen all day and then you go into an interview, you aren't, you know, it's so doubtful that you're going to be at your best. So I would always say as well, really, really key is to do something that you really love. Dance around to some music, you know, half an hour before, that uplifts you. Go out in the fresh air, get some fresh air, at least step away for half an hour and get yourself, do some power posing. I don't know if anyone knows power posing. But,
Have you got your favourite one you can show us, Kate?
Oh, my power posing?
Yeah.
I only really know the one. Is there more than one?
Well, I imagine that one of yours might be doing press-ups on your husband's back, or...
No, I just do that for fun. For me, I love really high energy music. So whenever I have to do anything, I just I love 90s like dance music. I just rave around the kitchen to that. But I taught my daughter some. There's a really obvious power pose. Luckily, I haven't got tracksuit bottoms on. But you know, you're standing like this and really like getting pumped to do it. And my daughter does that before her dance competitions when she does dance. She's only 9, but I got her into
That's wonderful.
I really get you, you know, pumped before, because that will show.
Yes. Yeah, because you want to have an energy about you, but you don't want to be forceful with asserting what you can do, but you want to have like a confidence and an energy that you are in your body, that you are confident about who you are, and that you can speak with ease about what you can do. And so what I love about that power pose that you just did was you got your feet shoulder width apart on the ground, that your feet are strong on the ground, so that makes you feel balanced. And then your breathing means like, my body is full of oxygen because my brain is going to need that. Love it.
Do you know what I was just thinking? Did you see my slippers?
No, I saw you thinking though.
I was just then thinking.
I saw you thinking, and I thought,
look, my slippers for an interview. I wasn't planning on standing up.
Well, we never saw it, so you just outed yourself. You just showed your humanity. How wonderful.
Got to wear some slippers.
Now we want to see your blooming slippers. So I love that. And I guess another thing that I always do, no matter how often I have lots of different settings for mine, and I love your setting. It's stylish, it's clean, it's not distracting, but I always test what it looks like on Zoom, because I know I've got access to that. And sometimes when you're joining somebody else's Zoom ID, you can't see what you look like before until they invite you onto the screen. So I always just go into zoom.us, host meeting with video, and just check it out. Is the lighting right? Is there something I've missed on the side that's distracting? Will I lose people's attention to what's behind me?
Yeah.
And, have I got enough filter on? I'm joking.
Well, you can do filters now, can't you, on Zoom, apparently?
You can. The other day I looked at myself and I thought, I've just looked in the mirror and now I'm looking at this and I do not look this good in the mirror. So what is going on? And I was trying to clean the lens, thinking I had something dirty on the lens. And actually in the video settings, where it says stop video, and in there it says, just for those that want to do this, says video settings. And then there is touch up my appearance.
Yeah, I've seen it. I need to look at that. I've not.
Well, I had the bar to 100% touch up my appearance. I looked about 9 years old. So I brought it back to reality. It's touch up my appearance a tiny bit, probably about 10%.
Oh, right, I need to get onto that. Although it's one of those situations, isn't it? Once someone employs you, they're going to be really disappointed when you turn up.
Oh no, not when you turn up, darling.
If you've got your, you look like a 12-year-old.
Oh, you're much more mature than I was expecting.
Helps with the whole discrimination of age, doesn't it?
Yeah. Which actually is a question I want to ask you, but I'll ask you in a moment. So the Zoom interviewing, what else would you say about checking the microphone out, even if you checked it out on the previous call?
Yeah, so checking out sort of your sound, making sure that all works. I definitely think testing it with someone, just do whatever you can to make sure that all those things, and as you mentioned there, it's okay to have some things in the back, but don't make them distractive. You don't want anything to distract people from looking at you, if there's certain weird objects in the background or, you just don't want people's mind will start to wander. So if in doubt, just have a plain background. And the other thing I was going to mention, if you don't have any sort of extra lighting, is make sure you don't sit with a window behind you, because that just, cast a shadow. Make sure ideally you've got a window in front of you. That's the best option if you can, and check everything. The other thing is to make sure that you silence, if you've got notifications on your computer, if you can silence those, or make sure your phone's on silent. There's nothing worse than if you're worrying, you've got messages coming through, because the natural reaction, is to look at that. And as you say, that's just, you wouldn't do that in a normal interview, would you? You wouldn't have your phone with you, I hope. So make sure you don't do that.
That is such brilliant advice. And like you say, it's that obvious, but sometimes we need telling. And I've noticed some people that have, probably on the networking Zoom meetings, where their window is behind them and all you can see is a black image. It's like they're completely blacked out. And I once was running a training session for Travelodge sales team, and inadvertently I had stood at the French windows out onto the patio with the sun coming in, because I didn't want to stand with my back to the door where everybody was coming in. And it was only 10 minutes in there, and I said, "Oh, is this making sense to you?" And somebody said, "We can hear you, but we can't see you." And it was a while ago, and I had no idea that it caused that effect. But you don't know it, because sometimes you can see yourself perfectly fine, can't you?
Yeah, you can see it, but obviously for the other person, definitely do just check that. You'll find a place in your home somewhere or wherever you are that you can get. Do you know, one of the things I thought of yesterday, which I've never really mentioned to people before, but I had it yesterday working. So because I've got 2 children at home homeschooling, and both of them need to be on devices. My husband's working from home and it was like having dial-up internet yesterday. It was like horrendous. So I would just make sure that if you do have a choice, just think, if you've got a whole household that's using the internet at the same time, you need to make sure you've got a strong internet connection. So if there's better times, do consider that, because if it's yesterday, I was really struggling because of everyone was on the internet at the same time. Now, you may not have that issue, but just make sure you're in your home somewhere where there's a good connection and that it isn't overloaded with other people using it at the same time.
So, right. What do you think about virtual backgrounds? How does that favour with the person making the decision recruitment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think turn up in a Hawaiian shirt and have like some kind of beach behind is probably not appropriate. My personal, and I guess it's a preference thing, is to just have something plain of your own and not use a virtual background. However, if you don't feel that it's appropriate from what we've kind of mentioned, just use something very plain. There are some backgrounds, I'm not familiar with all of them, but there are some that have like bookshelves in the background or anything like that. If you feel more comfortable with that and you feel it looks professional, I think it's about judgment, and there's going to be preferences. This is down to the individual, really. I would say that if you've just got a plain wall behind you, that to me would be more favourable than trying to create a virtual background. However, if you feel there is a virtual background that is more professional than anything you can offer, then I would go for that.
And blonde hair gets lost on virtual green screens virtual backgrounds, blonde hair, gets lost. And I think do walk around with your laptop and see if you can get a piece of plainness, and then make sure you've got your lamps near you, because I've got professional lighting. I know you've got great lighting as well. I think yours is professional, but not everybody has that at home, and some people are using a corner of their bedroom, aren't they? And so but get your lamps around you and get yourself lit up.
I mean, my ring light, I've just got a ring light, and it was like £20 on Amazon. So it's, if you're going to be doing interviews, it's in my opinion, it's probably worth the investment if you can. It's not essential, but it does help, because I'm in like the top, like an attic room, so the lighting's not great in here because I've got skylights which do cast shadows. So I mean, it doesn't have to be expensive to have good lighting. I was going to mention, sorry, just on that internet thing and about your families. One of the things as well, sometimes you can feel like you're like in a quiet place, but make sure you really communicate with your household, because I always remember that guy. Do you remember on the news and his child? Do you remember? That just and his wife were out, like scrambled in. But make sure you do communicate I'm not going to be available and don't come in, because you might feel like, oh, there's homeschooling or whatever, but they might come in and ask you to help them with their improper fractions halfway through your interview. So just make sure that if you do have other people in the house, that you do communicate that to them, that you must not be disturbed under any circumstance.
Because whilst I think people are very forgiving, I think on some of the call centres that you ring up, that they say our team are working from home, so you might hear noises familiar with a home in the background. Please know that we do value you, and your call is very important to us, and you do have the undivided focus of our person. Mm-hmm. Whilst I know that is, people are considering that, I also think that it's not an excuse not to do anything. And also, if I was doing an interview with somebody, I'd be looking that they had secured the area the best that they could, as in that they weren't being interrupted, and that, because you can tell when it's a casual interruption, and that you would say, like, remember we talked about this, go back and I'll be with you in an hour. Or whether they said, okay, darling, yes, I know. There's a difference, isn't there? We've talked about this. Go back.
Yeah, and I had a meeting the other day, and it was with a guy, and his wife just kept popping in, and I just think, it is actually rude, because there's no reason why, when you're in a meeting, unless there's something serious, it's not an excuse just to be, that's unprofessional. You need to be saying, look, I am in an interview and I can't be disturbed about what you're having for tea the next 3 days. It's just not acceptable. There are obviously extreme circumstances, and obviously if you are on your own at home with children, you can only do your best. But I do think that there is a bit of and I think this is generally what I was going to talk about, people feeling that, oh, well, it's on Zoom, there's that kind of, there's a bit of a professionalism that's being lost, because we do so much on Zoom with, like, family quizzes, and it becomes quite sort casual. Of relaxed and casual, and I think we've got to remember that this is an interview, and you are creating a really great first impression, which first impressions are so, I'm sure you know about this, Lisa, but it takes 6 further meetings to change someone's first impression of you.
Absolutely. I think that's probably the fundamental, a really fundamental thing is, don't get too casual. And the other thing is, if you were in an interview, or if you were in a meeting face to face, you wouldn't go into that room. You just wouldn't go into that room. So why make everything more casual and familiar with, and actually it's a reflection of them that is being illuminated early on. Even if it isn't him or her doing the interrupting, the fact that that's happening to me would tell me something.
Well, I love the saying that how you do some things, how you do everything, and I think that is definitely the case, isn't it? If you think that that's acceptable, I would start thinking, well, what else is acceptable? That is, you know, it annoyed me the other day with this guy. I just, you know, and he may have said to his wife or whatever, but she kept just popping in, and it's just a bit, you know, I'm this is important to me, and my time is valuable, and the interviewer's time is valuable, as is yours. You know, so I think definitely being courteous and professional, because we are becoming, life has become more casual anyway in many respects, but you know, it is still an interview, and you've got to differentiate with that.
How would you encourage people to get their best selves across on Zoom? I mean, are people in your experience feeling more awkward, or are they being too relaxed, or are they being, you know, overcompensating? Which way are people going?
I think I don't hear a lot of people overcompensating. It's much more about firstly the things we mentioned about just being unaware almost of the, it's bizarre that almost what's around them, because they're there, doesn't count. So I think to get the best, I would definitely say, you know, dress as you would for an interview. I know we're all used to walking around and sitting around in tracksuit bottom. I mean, I'm not a very casual person. I don't really, sorry to say this, but I'm not really, I'm not a comfortable person in really casual clothes. But even, you know, I've become very, very casual in, you know, I put my gym leggings on, and I was always one of those people, I'll never sit around in gym leggings, but I do now, because that's what we do, isn't it? But when you're going for an interview, make sure that you are wearing what you would wear for an interview. Just because it's behind a video screen it makes no difference. You are still, although you're at home, you still need to portray that professional image, or whatever image it is you're trying to create. So dress as you would want to be received, and what the impression that you're trying to create. And the other thing is, as I mentioned there about kind of before the interview, getting some fresh air or whatever that is, your non-verbal cues are really, really important. So make sure that you are not sitting back in your chair, because if you sit, I mean, instantly, if I just sit like that, I mean, it gives you a whole different, lean in or sit up straight, because if you lean in, it shows that interest. I am quite a animated person with my hands, as you can see. Just be really careful not to fidget with your hands. So if you need to keep them, you know, in front of you or whatever that is, because like you said with the phone and things like that, if you're nervous, sometimes you can fidget, and people might misconstrue that as you being on your phone or, you know, doing whatever. So try and, you know, be conscious. And again, this is where I think practicing with somebody and recording it is really useful, because you can pick up on those things. But doing a lot of nodding and saying, you know, yes, and agreeing, and that just really shows engagement. And you almost need to do that more, because you're not face to face. One of the things that's really really important as well, that is very different from when you were face to face, is when someone is talking, you do need to pause quite a bit before you then speak as well. So be conscious of that pause, because you will notice there's a bit of a delay. So you need to make that conscious pause so that you don't end up everyone speaking, especially if there's a few people interviewing on the call. And what I would say with that is, especially if you do have like stuff going on in the house, when the interviewer is talking, mute yourself. If they're talking for, you know, if they're going to be talking for a few minutes, not every single time they speak, but mute yourself, because if you've got lots of noise, it's going to distract them and interrupt their flow. And obviously it doesn't look professional if there's lots of noise in the background. So do just pop yourself on mute whilst they are talking.
It can also be really irritating trying to talk with a noise going on in the background, and that irritation can get, even though it's not that person, but that irritation can get attached to that person. And when the interviewer thinks about that person in the future, think, oh, and then they remember the irritation, they forget the brilliance sometimes, or that people have to be, because we tend to remember how we feel when we're with somebody. And that's such a brilliant tip. Last night I was at a networking event, and a couple of the people weren't muted. And it was just, and I don't know whether it was the sound of their computer or the husband in the background or something, but there was an irritating noise coming from two areas, plus the host who, and in my mind I was thinking, oh please mute, because I'm quite noise sensitive, in that any noises, regular noises that belong, like a clock ticking or, you know, the freezer, or that kind of noise, I'm fine with, but noises that don't belong in the situation make my system feel stressed. Logically, I know it's just a noise, but it makes
Oh, Lisa, I'm exactly the same, and I get really, I just have this whole thing. It instantly makes me just feel like it's disrespect. That you know, when a speaker is speaking and then someone shuffling or the start, you know, it should be an automatic thing by now. I would hope that people just mute themselves, because I know a lot of meetings you're automatically muted, but just mute yourself. I mean, just aside about my 6-year-old and the homeschooling, I mean, every morning I think, oh, the poor teacher. Not 36-year-olds all like shouting at the same time, but that, you know, it is irritating, and it's disrespectful. So yeah, if you can do that, definitely, you know, definitely do that when they're speaking.
It's so, and there's the other thing that I think is, you can't over smile.
No,
because when you're in an interview on Zoom, this is it, everything is completely amplified. Whereas if you're in a meeting in person, they've got the office environment around, they've got the books on the shelves, they've got the chair, they can see the whole of you, your bag you've brought in, how you're sitting.
yeah.
On Zoom, it's just this, so everything here. So, and sometimes people's concentration face, mine is awful. Mine looks like I'm thinking of 100 ways of letting your tires down, you know, my resting face. So I have to smile, otherwise people are frightened. But
luckily you always smile.
Yeah, well, there's no accident to that, I can tell you. But you can't over smile. I mean, obviously don't be naturally smiling, whatever it takes, like you say, the dancing, the power pose, being focused, being dressed for it will help with that. And then the other thing I thought of was eye contact. Keep your eyes on the script no matter what. So last night's networking meeting, somebody was like, and I thought, like you said, you're representing your bloody business.
Yeah.
You're representing your business. And you think just because you're at home, you can wave at something, I'm just on here. If we're in a networking room, would your partner come in to the networking room and wave at you? Why is that suddenly okay?
It's just not, it's rude. Quite frankly.
My other half brought me a coffee in, and we take each other coffees in, but I sneak it in where nobody can see me, and I put it down. It's like I go in on my back. He came in, put it down where nobody could see him. I picked it up. I never went, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Because whilst that seems to be okay to do, I want the people that are there to know I'm giving you all that I have got. And just because I'm comfortable doesn't mean you're going to get less.
No.
It's just to be me bonnet. But I do think these things are obvious, but they're not.
I don't know whether there's maybe a psychological thing for people, because they've not made the effort to go somewhere, that the effort doesn't, it must be a psychological thing. They've not made the effort to specifically go to a place to do this. They're still in the home, I don't know, but it's not acceptable, basically.
I love your high standards. We've got a comment, darling. So we've got people watching.
Oh.
The comment is from Marie Besto. She says, on my Zoom interviews, I did my same outfits I would normally wear to interview. But I did notice at one point, I was sat sideways in the chair with my arm linked of the side. Must be on the side. She must have been sitting like this. I did quickly correct it. Plus for the Zoom interview, I had a table size flip chart behind the screen to remind me of the important topics I wanted to present.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, that was something I was going to add. A really great thing, and this really needs to be whether this suits the individual, because it might not.
Yeah.
But I find really useful, you can actually have like a Word document open on your screen, positioned so that you can look at salient points and notes if you need to. I know obviously, was it Maria?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have a flip chart or whatever, but you can actually have comments in a Word document on your screen as well, that if you need to refer to. Now, what I would suggest, if you feel that that's going to distract you, then please don't.
Yeah.
But if you feel that you could use that just to refer back to, then obviously do. Do you know that comments though just made me think about your interview clothing, because you maybe, you know, I've said you need to wear what you would to an interview, but there's certain things you probably wouldn't wear, because what if it's something that doesn't look quite right when you're sitting in, that would look right if they saw the whole person, that doesn't look right. So you do need to be comfortable. You know, if you kind of have got something where when you wear a dress, it kind of comes up here while you're in it. It's a stiff material, you know, do make sure you're comfortable, but make sure that you look smart and you feel at your best.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'll just show people my so when I was doing a speaking engagement last night, I still did it in the way I would do if I was on the stage, with the same energy and the same stories and the same mannerisms, but I'd had my first line written out. So I had so this is my setup, and it written on the flip chart. There's my window, and my office. You know, I've got files on there, I've got stuff in the corner. But what I've done is I've created a piece here where it looks quite, because I want to have the feeling of serenity and not office. So for this conversation, I wanted to have it like a calm feeling, and take those away. It looks a bit bland. I didn't want books behind me on this occasion. So it is about, but I do like the idea of having a document open, or that flip chart that Marie's just said.
Yeah.
I can tell though when somebody's reading from something on the screen.
Yeah, that's what you have to be careful of.
For me, it's distracting. For me,
well, this is the other thing I was just going to mention, is if you have got like a laptop or whatever, just make sure you elevate it so that the camera's as near to your eye level as possible, because if you look down, it's not an attractive look.
So how many chins?
But and I think I mentioned this to you, Lucy, the other day, and again, this some people might not, you know, see how you feel about this, but to encourage you to look in the camera rather than, because the people are lower. If you need to put something over where obviously you want to follow sort of cues in terms of connecting with people, but it's distracting to be able to look at the person and look at the camera. It's like, but looking into the camera to engage with people does engage much more with people. So a lot of people do suggest just putting something over the screen so that you are only looking into the camera.
Yeah, have you done that?
Yeah, I do that quite often.
Because I love looking at the person and how they're, but I guess it's our response, isn't it? So when you respond, look in the camera, but I love looking at the person and how they're speaking and how they're breathing. And
I think it depends on the circumstance, and I wouldn't certainly do it for anything like this, or, you know, there's certain times where I feel it's appropriate, and you've got to feel, you know, how you do. I guess as well,
you make a really good point, because when you looked then, I felt like you were looking right at me. So
yeah, and a lot of people, whereas I'm looking at your kind of face now, but if I kind of really look there, it's properly looking into your eyes, isn't it? And kind of.
I tell you a little tip. I don't know whether you've done this. You can press the green button, shrink it down, and then bring the corners in where you can bring the corners in where your image is at the top, really close to the camera. And so even though it's being filmed, it's coming out as landscape and we're side to side when you see it on how it's being streamed, in terms of the visual. So right now I've moved you, I've narrowed it in So now you're on top of me. So when I'm listening, my eyes are much closer to the top of the screen.
See, I'm on top of you at the moment.
Right.
What's the view I need to go to there? I've got speaker view or gallery view.
Gallery view.
Yeah, that's what I'm on, but I'm at the top.
Ah, that's not.
I think that's because you're the host, perhaps.
Right. Might be. It might be. But it's worth playing with, isn't it? Seeing if
definitely. It's just got to be what suits you.
Yeah.
You know, different Zoom. I do Zooms for lots of different things, people have it on different. Some people like it to have gallery view so they can see everyone that's on the call. I personally prefer to have it on speaker view so that I'm focused wholly on that person.
Yeah.
But it's whatever suits you, I think. But do be conscious of where the camera is, not necessarily just the person's face.
Yeah, and I started doing quite a lot of I started to do some of my filmed interviews that way, but then when I watched them back, it looked like I wasn't paying attention, because when we're speaking this way, you can kind of see us looking towards each other.
Yeah.
But for interview, I think you're absolutely right to be looking in the camera.
Yeah.
I noticed that when I had it that way that I've just described, squashed up so that you're above me, and so I'm actually looking into the camera when I'm looking at you, it translated on an interview, as in an interview where I'm for my channel, not for a job. It actually looked like I was disengaged and looking straight ahead rather than focused on you. So you have to kind of play with what it records.
And that's why I really do think the whole, it might seem a bit weird doing a practice with a friend or someone, do it with someone in your family, even downstairs, they could be, but it really is so valuable because you can just pick up on so much, and because your perception of what you're doing might not actually be what's going on at all. So really do that practice. And yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important things to prepare.
I love it. Have you got any more? I don't want to cut you off, but I also know that you've got very important meetings soon.
Yeah, I think that was pretty much. I think there's so much more in terms of preparation, obviously, which is really, really important before you even, go into the interview. But I think the main thing is to really remember it is an interview, and you need to do the same level of preparation. So one of the things as well is make sure, this is kind of exactly who's going to be on the meeting. Oh yes, there was one other thing I was going to say is make sure beforehand you have the telephone number and or email of the person, because if you get cut off, you want to be able to, if your internet dies, you want to be able to get straight to that person and let them know or speak to them. Otherwise, you're just left there kind of hanging. And I've had people where, and there are some employers that don't mention this, but where they've said that there's going to be one person and then there's like 5 people turn up, and that can be really off-putting. You want to make sure you know who's going to be in, and also what the format's going to be, because what I'm finding is this whole new relaxed situation with everything and informality, it can be very difficult to gauge what it's going to be like, because we think it's so relaxed. So make sure that you know what the format of the interview. There is nothing wrong with asking that beforehand. What is the format? Will it be a competency-based interview, or how is that going to play out? Because you want to be prepared for that.
Yeah, and that's okay too. I think some people think that they shouldn't ask because they should be able to step into anything. But if you were going to a business meeting on behalf of that company, you would want the company to know that you're going to be super prepared. You're going to know exactly what the format is, exactly what you need to be delivering. Are you presenting? Are you answering questions? Are you standing at the front? Are you taking them? You would want to know. You wouldn't just want to show up and think, right, I'm going to wing it. And so there is reassurance that you're giving the interviewer that you are asking those questions, because that's the version of you that's going to be working for them. And
absolutely, you want someone who, I always worry when I ask, in terms of helping candidates with preparation and they seem to know it all. That to me just there's alarm bells. I want people who say, okay, so what sort of questions do you think I'll be getting asked? What are the people like that'll be interviewing me? Because that's really important. What's their sort of style? How many people will be there? What's going to be the process? What's the interview process from there? Is it just one meeting? All of those things, there is nothing wrong with asking those questions. In fact, it makes you look much more interested and that you're not just turning up to anything.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, you've given some really brilliant advice, regardless of whether it's an interview. You know, even if it's it's valuable for anybody that's self-employed. You know, all that testing, noticing what you look like from there up, muting, background, lighting, not fiddling, eye contact, smiling, power pose, breathing, and also
I mean, I was going to say, just even businesses, you know, people who are, like you say, who have their own businesses, people, you know, what is the impression that you were giving? Is that the impression of your business that you want? You know, if you're turning up in your pajamas, yawning, is that if that's your business persona, then that's absolutely fine. But if it's not, that is what you're portraying, and that's all they can see.
And because it is just this bit, everything is amplified, and so it's about keeping that focus. I think that's been absolutely brilliant, darling, and I know that we are going to look at preparation and follow-up.
Yeah, that's important. I think the preparation is kind of the precursor, isn't it, and really important. I mean, and also it's not about being perfect at all, and I don't want to send people into this fear of kind of, you've got to be your authentic self, but it's not about perfection at all. It's being true, but you know, it's about communicating in a way that is the correct way with the audience that you are communicating to, and how you want to be perceived, and just being aware of it.
Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for your really.
I hope that's been helpful, everyone.
It has, and we've got comments on, and we'll get more. And if anybody's watching this later, can you put #replay on so that we know that it's reaching you? And if you know anybody that needs to hear this, then please invite them to the group or share it with them at home, because your intention, Kate, isn't it, to add value to people's lives, helping them have life easier, and every interaction with you is you want to offer value. So it's our intention that you get value out of this. So share.
And if anyone sorry, I was going to say, I didn't pause there, did I, Lisa? I talked.
You've got the job.
I was going to say that if anyone has any specific questions, I'm more than happy to help you. Just get in touch. Even if they sound really, really, you might think they sound silly, I really don't mind. I'm happy to help you. You might have one of those niggling questions that's just bothering you, and that can have an impact on your interview as well, because you're thinking about it. So if you've got any questions at all, please reach out to either me or Lisa, and I'll be more than happy to help.
That's brilliant. And I think the bit that you said right at the beginning is be really mindful what you're playing in your mind before the interview, because that's what you're preparing yourself for. And so visualize yourself being at your best in terms of ease, flow, confidence, expertise, wisdom, and harmony. It's not a tennis game. So we've got some thank yous from Marie. Yeah, people are saying thank you, darling. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
We're seeing you next Friday with your other hat on, about gut.
My gut hat.
Your gut hat. Where we're going to talk about gut health and how it affects who we are, how we think, how we function, our energy, our fatigue, our sharpness, our brightness. We're covering that next Friday.
Bit of guts. Everyone loves the guts.
Absolutely. Thank you, lovely lady. Lovely.
Have a great Friday, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. See you later.